Meeting at Nedlac took place today. Matthew Parks from Cosatu joins me in studio. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Before we go to that meeting, just wanted to get your response on government allowing mining companies to generate energy for self-use without a license.
Yeah, look, there's been a discussion which has been gaining increasing momentum. I think for us as Cosatu, what's critical is saving the mining industry. The mining industry has really struggled because of the lack of reliable electricity. Load shedding has a huge impact upon the mining industry. But equally, many sectors of the mining industry are on the verge of collapse because of the high price of electricity. So if there's interventions that can reduce that, can address those concerns, I think we'll be open to engagement, because we have thousands of jobs in the mining industry. We really need to make sure that we can save it and grow it. And for us, it's actually not a sunset industry. There's huge opportunities to grow it, especially around renewable energy technology, which will use key components like lithium, platinum, and so on. So actually there are huge economic opportunities if we can stabilize it and grow it.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of power, at that meeting today, apparently Cosatu presented a plan to rescue Eskom. Tell us about that.
Sure. Look, I think, so we presented our proposals. Cosatu have been developing engagement for some time. I think for us, what is the number one issue is that Eskom can collapse. It's highly indebted, it's bleeding every month, it's having to borrow money to exist every month. Eskom is the most important company in the entire country. There's no part of our life which will be possible without electricity. Eskom provides 95% of our electricity, 100% of our distribution and transmission. So we have to save it. Its current debt levels of 454 billion are breaking Eskom as we speak. We have not got a credible plan that anybody's presented to save it. And also worried because the President is having the State of the Nation address next week. There's a budget speech 2 weeks later. The investors and Moody's are looking at us to present a credible plan to save Eskom, because that is the heart of the entire economy. So we've made proposals about 30-point interventions around Eskom, starting with the debt levels that we are willing as Cosatu to support investments in Eskom, to reduce the debt level so it can breathe, it can heal, it can invest in maintenance and infrastructure and so on. But our conditions are not a blank check. Part of the problems at Eskom is that it has been looted, it's been mismanaged and so on, and those who have stolen from it must go to jail. The managers who have broken it must be fired and be held accountable. We need to see a comprehensive forensic audit of all of its expenditures, its contracts and so on, so we know where the looting is taking place, because we can't invest if we're not filling the holes. We can't do this once and come back a year down the road and say, no guys, we're still looting, fix it again. This is a once-off intervention. We're willing to do it. But we also need to provide assurance to pensioners, to workers, that the pension money will not be affected. The Government Employee Pension Fund is a defined benefit based upon years of service, the amount you contributed. The PIC has been sitting on profits for the last decade and a half. The PIC went from 700 billion rand 15 years ago to 2.2 trillion rand today. What we're looking at for Eskom is actually to invest about 7% of that 2.2 trillion rand. We're not affected at all. The pensions are safe. But also we need to say that if you do not save Eskom, there will be no pensions, there will be no job left in this country, there will be no economy. Because you cannot put petrol in, you cannot turn on the water taps, you cannot charge your phone, you cannot get to work without that. So we're saying we need a social compact as labour, as business, as government, as community, where we all contribute something, we all make a compromise, a sacrifice, for saving the broader nation.
Let's talk about the PIC. Returns are meant to be around 11%. They're said to be coming in at 4%. There's that Mpati Commission of Inquiry into the corruption that's taking place, or alleged corruption that's taking place at the PIC. It's an institution that, although it has some of the issues that you've raised, has some of the ones that I have raised, and perhaps needs to be left alone for a little bit while it also recovers and heals and gets back as one of Africa's largest asset managers. Is there nowhere else that the money can be found besides PIC and DBSA?
Sure, look, the scale right now at Eskom says two things. One is the debt of 454 billion rand. Eskom can manage about 200 billion rand. So we need to find the 254 billion rand. Governments don't have that kind of money. Governments struggle to get 2 billion rand for SAA. You can increase taxes. You'd have to increase VAT to about 35%. That will collapse the economy. You increase other taxes, equally there'll be a negative impact. We cannot borrow anymore. The PIC is a better option because, one, it's 2.2 trillion rand. So this is a very small 7% fraction of it. The PIC already invested 104 billion rand a few years ago in Eskom. So we can do it. The alternative is, if we don't do it, the damage to the economy when Eskom collapses will be in the trillions of rands. So that's the better option. The better option also is that if you go the IMF route, the IMF will impose such brutal austerity measures, which will include retrenching thousands of workers, cutting social grants, cutting pensions, cutting the wage bill. It'll have a massive negative economic impact, which will send us into an economic depression. So this is a safer option. It's not one which is ideal. The other thing is to remember that the PIC money is not sitting in petty cash drawer, it's invested in the stock market largely. So we're saying, let's shift about 7% to Eskom, a company which benefits all of us. We've done this before with Edcon. Edcon was on the verge of collapse a year ago. We had a social compact where we did a similar thing, and it's made huge progress. So this is the same principles, but for a company which will benefit all of us as South Africans.
Matthew Parks from Cosatu sharing some insight into that meeting that took place earlier and Cosatu's plan to try and fix Eskom. So Nompumelelo Siziba will be back with more news at the top of